Hello YouTube and welcome to another episode of The Cloudy Vape. Alright, in this video we're going to be building on this Plume clone from Tobacco. This build is going to be a parallel dual coil using 26 gauge Kanthal. When you're done with this, it should be sitting at 0.26 ohms. Okay, before we get started on this build, I just want to put out a word of caution. Always take care when you're building these sub-ohm builds. Only do it if you're experienced or if you understand what exactly is happening when those coils heat up. Always make sure that the posts are screwed down tight before you start firing your device, and always use the safest batteries possible. A high drain, high amp, high mAh battery is always the best to use. Never settle for those cheap batteries. It might be a couple bucks extra, but always buy very nice high quality batteries, because that is the safest way you can possibly do this. One other thing to mention, if you just Google Ohm's Law, read up on Ohm's Law before you start doing any type of sub-ohm, even just regular single ohm builds. Understand, try to just get a little grasp of what the Ohm's Law really is, and how the dissipation and the resistance and how heat really works with these coils. That'll always help you before you actually get into building. And if you're a seasoned builder, then please disregard this and just skip ahead. One more thing to mention, I've built this on a few different types of RDAs. The way the Plume has all different types of airflow options, that is really why I chose this build on the Plume. You're not going to get the airflow you need from this coil from something like a tugboat or something with a lower airflow. So keep that in mind if you have a 3-post RDA and you're trying to do this build. Always make sure you have the adequate airflow for the build you're trying to do. Time for me to shut up and build it. But first, let me take a vapey. Alright, before we get started, let's see what we're going to need to build this. First, we're going to need a Plume, of course, 26 gauge Kanthal, a screwdriver, an ohm reader, some clippers, and I like to build on this screwdriver. It's just easier to move around and maneuver. This is 3/32, so if you have a drill bit that's 3/32, that will also work. Alright, let's take off these old coils and then put them right back on brand new. You want about two 12-inch pieces of Kanthal to start out with. So here's your two ends, then you want to loop them around, and then right here you want to just pinch down right here. Then you can get some needle nose pliers or some tweezers, whatever you want. I'm actually using the flat part inside of these clippers to crimp this down. So basically what you want to do is just crimp down this and make sure it's crimped down together. So when you're done, it should be crimped down like this. You should have two pieces crimped down together. For these leads that are kind of sticking out, what I do is just kind of bend them straight until you get them nice and straight. And then all you need to do is right at the end, if you have any bends right here, you want to just cut it straight so these two ends are nice and straight. That will help it when you're feeding it into the RDA. Alright, let's start this wrap. Let's go over and under. Basically just get a nice firm grip on whatever you're wrapping on and start the wrap. Let's go down. And then again, I like to tuck this smaller lead back around. You see right here we have 2 wraps so far. You want to count them not by how many actual wires you see. You want to count them by the actual wraps. So this is a total of 2 wraps, and you're going to see 4 wires in this. So what we want to do is a total of 8 wraps, so you'll see 16 wires on this. And let's go. We're starting at 2 and we want to go to 8. One thing to mention, make sure you have a good grip on the lead down here. That'll really help you wrap these coils tight. And then hold this other lead right here with this finger. Make sure you hold that tight. So let's start wrapping. Alright, this is what it should look like when you're done wrapping it. It's a total of 8 wraps using 2 wires, so that's a total of 16 wires that you can actually count on that. Or if you count it in 2s, it'll be 8 wraps. Alright, what you can do is just build another identical coil just like this. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. I won't do the second coil on this video. I'll just go ahead and skip ahead and start building. Alright, here is our 2 coils. The leads are identical. They're going down in the same direction. There's a little bit of spacing on some of these coils, but we can get that out when we heat it up. Unfortunately, I ran out of butane on my torch, so what I'm going to do is go use my kitchen stove. So we'll have a little intermission, and then I'll come back and I'll build this. Alright, this is what it should look like when you're all done. You should heat these up and crimp them together nice and tight, and then let's put it in the RDA. You want to take your longest lead and put it in one of the positive connections. What you want to do is you want to put it in the farthest positive connection. So what you want to do is you want to have one negative going into the negative, of course, and then you want to skip this positive and go to this one. So the 2 coils should actually be going into this and this, and then the next coil will go into this and this. Just one thing to mention, if you try to put the coil into the closest positive to the negative, the coil is so large that you're actually going to bend the coil and it's not really going to fit in there. So make sure you're skipping that first positive and going into the second positive, so you're actually staggering the positive connections. Alright, one other thing to mention on your coils, pick whatever lead you like. I usually put the longest lead into the positive connection and the shorter lead into the negative connection. One thing to note, you want to take your negative lead wherever the negative is going to be, and you want to just slightly bend this lead out just a little bit so you can center that coil a little bit better. So it should look something like this when you're done. So it should look something like that. You want to just slightly have a bend on it. Alright, let's go ahead and insert this coil. So you want to put your positive in first. Remember, we're staggering it. So we're putting it on the second one, and then we're going to put our negative in. So get it about where you want it, and then go ahead and just hold that coil down nice and tight. And then let's get a screwdriver and tighten up these negative and positive connections. Okay, once the negative and positive connections are tightened down, just kind of bend this coil straight. So if you're looking at it straight, you want to just have it bent a little bit. You kind of want to have it in line with the positive block, this block right here. If you can see this steel block behind it, you want to have it about in line with this positive block, so sitting right below the tops of these screws. Alright, flip this around and cut the leads. Alright, there you go. There's one coil. Let's put the other one in. Alright, same thing. You want to take your screwdriver or your drill bit, insert it into the coil. The reason you're doing this and you're not just shoving the coils in is because when you're building with parallel, you always want to make sure that they're tight together. Essentially, you just wrapped 2 coils smashed together. So what you're needing to do is make sure that those coils remain smashed together, stuck together, and you can wiggle it out of place if you don't have it in the actual drill bit or the screwdriver that you first put it on. Now again, don't forget this negative lead that you're going to use. I usually use whatever side I crimped. If you can see right there, I crimped this side. I use that side for the negative lead. It's just easier to feed in. So what we'll do is just bend it out, like I said. Bend that negative lead out just a little bit, so it should look something like that. And then this lead, this is really important because if you put this in, you're actually going to poke this into the other coil. So you want to take this lead right at the tip, and you want to bend it around, almost make an entire like U out of it, because you want to hook it around so it goes up, and when it pops in right past that coil. You'll see what I mean when I put it in. So if you see here, you want to make a kind of hook on your next positive lead. Alright, now I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this in so you can see it without my hands being in the way. So just bear with me. I might move it around a few different directions while I try to show you it. So let's go ahead and take your next negative, let's go ahead and take your positive connection, which is this empty one right here in the center, and let's go ahead and put your positive lead in first. Remember, we made a hook, so what it will do, it'll go through that positive post, and it'll actually hook up right in front of this coil. So that's what we want to do. Let's go ahead and put it in. Now watch very closely as I push the positive lead in. It'll just hook up and go right past that second coil. Now what you can do as you're holding on to this, you can take these clippers or some needle nose pliers, grab that positive lead, and you want to make sure as you're feeding in the positive, you also feed in this negative. This negative should have no problem just going right in. So make sure you, as you're feeding that positive in, you feed in that negative real quick, and then take this positive lead and then just get a nice grip on it and just give it a pull. You want to make sure that the coil on this side is nice and tight. You want to make sure this is nice and tight. In case this first wrap kind of comes off or backs out a little bit, you want to just have a nice firm grip on it, and then you want to pull this positive lead up just so you can tighten that down nice and tight before we tighten down the posts. Alright, same as the other one. Get it about where you want it, and then hold your thumb down, hold nice and firm on that coil. And then let's go ahead and get a screwdriver, and let's go ahead and tighten down the positive and the negative screws that are left. Alright, now remember, we want to get this coil about as high as the post base, so you want it just a little bit below. The top of the coil should be a little bit below the screw heads. So just grab it, put your drill bit through it, and then just adjust it so it's about even with the other coil. Alright, let's clip these other leads. Alright, the last thing to do is make sure that all your posts are tightened down, and then adjust these coils to about where you want them. Make sure that they are even between the positive post and the negative post, and make sure that they are left and right about where you want them. One thing to mention, if you are using the Plume valve, keep in mind you have these bottom airflows, so you don't want to push these coils too much to the opposite side or too much to the center. You actually want these coils a little bit to the right and to the left so you can hit the airflow coming in from the bottom. So make sure your coil is sitting a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. And also, if you push the coil too much to the center, you're going to bend this wire too much. As you can see, this wire is bent just a little bit, but if you push it too much, it's going to bend way too much, and you actually want that airflow coming in, and that'll get you a much more vapor production out of this RDA. Alright, the next thing to do is to fire up this RDA. First, make sure you have these posts tightened down nice and tight. Make sure that your battery is charged or has a high charge on it, and always make sure you're using the best batteries before you're firing up something like this. Okay, this build is sitting at 0.26 ohms. Now if you notice, you want this glowing from the inside out. If it's not glowing from the inside out, try to crimp it down with some tweezers. Just pinch it together with some tweezers. Then also, if it's not heating up left to right, make sure that the posts are tightened down snug enough. You don't want to over tighten it and break the canthal, but they should be snug enough. One other thing to mention, if they're not lighting up from the center out, also check the connection on the bottom of the RDA to your actual mod. And then the last thing is put the drill bit inside of the coil and adjust it, and try to flatten out this coil as flat as you can, and make sure that the heat dissipation is actually going through all of it. Alright, this is good to go. Let's put some cotton in it, put some juice in it, and then vape on it. Alright, I'm using this Japanese cotton I just picked up. If you've never used Japanese cotton, it's really nice. It wicks really well. It's unbleached, it's natural. As you can see, there's little specks of the actual plant inside of it, so that's awesome. You're actually going to get a better vape out of this because of how coarse this is. It's a lot more coarse than the other cottons. And also it withstands higher temperatures, so especially using something like this, normal cotton after a while is going to end up burning inside of a parallel build. So keep in mind, if you're able to pick up some of this Japanese cotton, and if it's at a reasonable price, I picked this up for about $8 for a huge bag of it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description box below, but check it out, it's pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is just tear about a 1/4 inch piece of this. And then what I want to do is just put it together and then just slightly roll it together. Always make sure you wash your hands before you handle this cotton, or you're going to have a nasty taste on the cotton. Alright, there we go. Just want a nice little tube of it. Alright, the next thing to do is just make a nice point out of it like you would any cotton. Make a point. Just like that. And let's just feed it through one side and then pop it out the other. Alright, what I like to do with parallel builds, if you haven't used a parallel build, the inside of this coil gets really hot compared to other coils, so the very center is really where you want the majority of the juice. So what I'll do is I'll pull it past where I want it to be, and then I'll just put a little bit of juice right on top of this cotton before I actually put it back. I'll slide it back once I put some juice on it. So let's just drip a little bit of juice on it and let it saturate real quick. Alright, there you can see it's already saturated. This Japanese cotton is really great. It saturates pretty much instantly. This is a 20 PG, 80 VG juice, and it saturates almost instantly. So let's take the other part, pull it right back through. And then what you want to do is give yourself about a 1/2 inch on the shorter part of the coil. So let's cut that right there. And then on the other side, you want to cut it right on the base of the RDA. So go ahead and take your screwdriver, take this little part, you want to fold it under, just like that, and then tuck it in. So if you use your screwdriver, just fold it under, tuck it in. And if you see, you actually want it just a little bit behind the coil. So once you fold it under, tuck it in, just stuff it right behind that coil. And then on this side, pretty much the same thing. You want to just fold it under just a little bit and then stuff it under and push it back to the back of the post underneath the coil. Stuff it under. Alright, this is what it should look like. I'm not going to put the cotton on the other side in this video, but you get the idea. This is pretty much how you want the coil to look like, and this is how you want the cotton to be put in. Alright, I went ahead and threw this back onto an 18650 mod, just so you can get an idea of how it vapes on an 18650. Alright, let's go ahead and saturate these coils, and then see how she vapes. Alright, we got this build all set up. Let's vape on it and talk about it. The flavor is great on this build. It is a really warm vape. That's what you really get with these parallel builds, so keep that in mind. If you're not wanting a really warm vape, you might want to stay away from parallel builds. The more airflow you put into the parallel builds, the cooler you're going to cool off that vape. So just keep that in mind also. But yeah, it's a nice warm vape. The flavor is great on this. You have the bottom airflows on this Plumeville, you have the top airflow and the side airflow. So depending on how you want to open it up, right now I just have the bottom and the sides open and the top is not open. Sometimes I'll open that up. It really just depends on what type of vape production I'm really trying to get out of this. But overall, I really like it. The flavor is really great. The other thing to mention, this parallel build really burns out the juice really quickly. So always maybe take 4 or 5 hits and then drop some more juice on that. Drop it directly on top of the coil. You want to make sure that the center of that coil really gets saturated. Because that coil is so long, you're going to really need to saturate the inside of it. And then also if you're using a VG juice, make sure you drop some juice on top of that coil and just let it sit for a minute. So there it is. There is the parallel dual coil with 26 gauge Kanthal. I hope you found this video helpful. If you like it, please like it. And if you like my videos in general, please subscribe. If you need help with this build, always leave a comment or send me a private message. Or you can also email me at cloudy.vape@gmail.com. I'll try to respond as quickly as I can and get you the help you need. And as always, stay classy and keep vaping.